Hello, I'm going to talk to you today about sexting, well, mostly about teen sexting and what schools can do about it or how they need to handle the situations. And we're going to be having a little debate about whether or not it should be a felony or just poor judgment that should be handled by the schools. Okay, what is sexting? Sexting is the act of sending a nude or semi-nude picture to someone. Okay, with the advent of technology and the fact that so many students now have technology, it's not surprising that in a recent study done by Drexel, they found that 1/5 or 20% of adolescents between the ages of 13 and 19 have sexted someone else or received a sext. Okay. Of course, the number one app that's being used for this is Snapchat. And if you aren't familiar with Snapchat, that's an app that allows you to take a picture and send it to someone, and they can only look at it for 10 seconds. And then it supposedly deletes itself off the phone. But when looking this up, there is a way to get the pictures. They are saved in the deep memory of your phone. You can also screenshot them. So teens are thinking that they're taking this picture and it's going to be a temporary thing, when really it could be a permanent fixture of the phone. And one of the reasons why I wrote this is because it's making a lot of media right now with that iCloud break-in, where that hacker got into many stars' iCloud accounts and was posting their private pictures they had taken online. And it's become this big hoopla about taking selfies in the nude. Okay, Michigan's laws. We actually do not currently have any specific laws for sexting. Currently, anybody who is found with these teen sex is charged with child pornography. In fact, Rochester Hills, they have 30 students under investigation, and in Romeo, Michigan, there's 6, and that happened this month, where they're looking into pressing child pornography charges. So if you're a teen and if you're a 15-year-old, let's say, and you take a picture of yourself in the nude, that's creation of child pornography. If you send it to someone else, that's distribution, and if that person has on their phone, that's possession of child pornography. Which in Michigan, for creation, that's maximum 20 years in prison and a fine of not more than $100,000 or both. Distribution, 7 years in prison with a fine of not more than $50,000 or both. And possession is 4 years in prison and a fine of $10,000 or both. Because right now that's really the only law that Michigan bring against these teenagers who may sext. Okay? And they've even been bringing these against if a teen sexts another teen, so they could be two 15-year-olds who send nude pictures to each other, but they're still saying that's child pornography. And of course, if they get convicted, they'll be on the sex offender list, and that's and they would have the felony, and that would stay with them for life. This past year, Michigan also passed a revenge porn bill, which that bill says that if you take someone's pictures that were meant to be private and they're explicit, and you post them online or in a public forum, you'd actually be subject to this revenge porn law. The revenge porn law is a misdemeanor, and that's up to 93 days in jail and or a maximum fine of $500. A second violation is 1 year behind bars up to, and a $1,000 fine. So again, they call it the revenge porn law because a lot of times it'll be a couple breaks up and they have new pictures of the other and they post them out of revenge. Okay. Other states, now depending on where you look it up, anywhere from 20 to 30 states have now made specific sexting laws. 4 states have actually made sexting a felony. 11 have made it a misdemeanor. And of course we're talking about teen sexting here. Because if you're a 40-year-old receives a sext from a 15-year-old, then that is child pornography because that man is 40 years old. That person is more than 3 years age difference. That's going to be possession of child pornography. The sexting laws are for teen sexting. So when a teen sexts another teen, and they have to be within 3 years age. So that means an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old, that's going to be under child pornography. But, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, that's going to be under this new sexting laws. Okay, the rest have made an informal crime where usually you have to go into a training session or you have to go and do some community service or something else. It varies from state to state. It goes anywhere from, like in New York, you just have to attend an 8-hour class. And I think I saw somewhere like Louisiana it's like a $200 fine for the first offense, like a $400 fine for the second, and $800 for the third offense. The one state that I saw that really had the most common thread was Arizona. And in Arizona, they actually had language in there that forgives the receiver of the sext as long as they reported it and made an effort to delete it. Arizona is also one of the states that came up with a definition for explicit sexual material and applied it to sexting. And they're also one of the ones who came up with the year difference in between them. So that means that, if you're a 15-year-old asking for sex from a 10-year-old, you're still going to be hit with the felony laws. They also made distribution still illegal as a felony. And that's to curb people from receiving one of these sex and then sending them out to everyone they know or posting it online. Because once you do that, you are distributing child pornography. Okay. So again, these sexting laws are mostly for two people going back and forth, not for mass distribution. That's going to go under the felony. There's been some court precedents. In Michigan, I could not find any cases that actually went to criminal court. I'm guessing most of them settled outside of court, because that seems to be the case, because many judges have a hard time, dropping child pornography charges on a teen, considering that they were, if you have like a 15-year-old sexting a 13-year-old, they have a hard time putting child pornography charges on both of them, since they're both under the age of 16 even. And there was a Pennsylvania ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals where there's 20 students convicted, or not, I shouldn't say convicted, but they're found sexting, and they're offered a plea deal where if they attended a class and wrote a letter of what they did being wrong, that they'd be let off without any charges. And 3 of the teens said they weren't going to do that. 2 of them were later acquitted because it turns out the photograph was of them in training bras. They weren't even nude or they weren't sexually explicit, so charges were just dropped altogether. The other teen had taken a topless picture of herself and sent it. That teen took it to the Court of Appeals, and they actually sided and said that that was not a felony and was not child pornography. So she actually had no charges brought against her. And like I said, even nationwide, not many of the cases actually make it to the criminal stage. For reform, there's an outcry for reform currently. One of the biggest components of that is there's a woman named Joanna Lamp who wrote an article for University of Michigan Journal of Law Reform that said that sexting was a victimless crime when done between 2 consenting teenagers. Again, she thought the distribution still a crime. Okay, she brought up that the U.S. Constitution includes protections for freedom of speech and expression, sexual privacy, and the rights of parents to guide the upbringing of their children. And she believed that sexting was kind of the crossroads of all these meeting, because it's us telling, or I should say, it's the law telling parents what their kids can and cannot do. It could be a freedom of speech, and that's part of their sexual privacy. Something else I found interesting was, if you think about it, if you have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old sexting, currently in Michigan, they're brought for child pornography. But now if you catch a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old engaging in sexual intercourse, you aren't going to charge statutory rape or having sex with a minor to either of those. And that's kind of the parallels drawn to that is, well, if they were having sex, you wouldn't charge them with, having sex with a minor. But yet when they sext, they're going to charge them with child pornography, even though they're still both minors. They're both adolescents. She wrote a guideline that said that sexually explicit text messages were not illegal unless there was a 3-year age difference within the teens, or if one of the teens was distributing it without the other's permission, or they created the sexting or the sexually explicit picture or video without the other's knowledge. Okay, not just Lampy, also Paul Walton, who's the assistant prosecutor for Oakland County, said that school districts need to stop turning these cases over to the police all the time, that they need to actually handle this with the students and the parents involved. because he believed that sexting laws were dangerous because the consequences were so life altering. It's that felony sex offender list for maybe a 15-year-old who was just sexting a 14-year-old, which he believed should not be something that goes into the court system. And also, Rana Elmir, who's the director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan, also agrees with that and believes that they're prosecuting children with laws, child pornography that was meant to protect children. Oh, sorry for that little hiccup there. Now, as an administrator, you have quite a monumental task ahead of you because these sexting laws are different in every state. Michigan doesn't have one. There's no federal law for it. And the laws are ever changing, and there's no real precedent currently in the state of Michigan for what to do with it. So that's why, as administrator, one of your first steps should be is to make sexting explicitly part of the school policy. Okay, and you can do that because sexting has shown to have some ill effects on students' psyche and their ability to learn within the classroom. Because a lot of times when a student sexts and it gets public, it could be part of bullying. They can feel neglected. There's even 2 cases. Jessica Lang and Amanda Todd are 2 students who committed suicide. You can look up cases on there about how they had a sext, went public, and they ended up getting bullied for it. And they both actually got bullied so much ridicule they ended up taking their life. So this is why you can make it part of school policy, even if it's against the freedom of speech. This is a safety issue and a mental wellness issue. When you make your policy, you need to make sure it's public and clear. Make sure it's the teachers know about it. Make sure the students and the parents know about it. Have that document sent out that they have to get signed that says that they've read it and understand it. Also, you should revamp your policy for bullying. Make sure it includes cyberbullying. Make sure it includes the sexting, because that's usually where the problems lie with this. You should have a crisis team assembled, which has your wellness advisors, your school psychologist, some staff on it, administrators that are ready for if a sex gets spread out to do some damage control, do some counseling with the students that are involved, do some information about how we could have handled the situation better. Also, you should have a technology plan in place which allows for you to monitor what the students are doing with technology inside your school to make sure that sexting is not occurring in the school, because then you're opening up a whole new can of worms of negligence for the fact that it was happening in your school under your nose without anyone knowing about it. Also, there's a school in our area that has an open technology plan, bring your own device, which is becoming more popular. And I kind of like that because you have to keep the device up on your desk at all times. And then when you're using it, it has to be face up. So you can't hide things from your teacher. And that would help keep it from happening within your classroom. You need to make sure your staff is trained in noticing when students are under distress. That just goes for good policy across the board, because that's how you can find out students who are being abused, either physically or mentally or sexually. You can find out who is under distress and find out why. Because if you find out that it was a sex message or something that's out there in the public forum, the earlier you find out about, the more damage control you can do. Another big thing is to create a positive atmosphere. They found that 50% of females who sext do so due to peer pressure. So if you have a school with a positive atmosphere and with where you promote student self-esteem, you'll probably have less sexting occurring. I'm not saying you can stop it, because the stats pretty much say that's going to happen at schools. It's just a matter of how the kids respond to it and what kind of bullying occurs after. And if you get that crisis on your hand, like in the Rochester Hills, they're actually trading pictures like trading cards of nude girls. And you always need to be working with local law enforcement to make sure that you are all on the same page and following current policy. Okay, so as administrator, this is a big task. This is new territory. I mean, sexting, the term sexting has only been around now for 5 years. And there's only been specific laws for 2 years. So it's still something that's being molded. So as administrator, you have to get that policy in early, make sure you're consistent, make sure you know what you're going to do, when it happens in your school. I'm not even going to say if anymore, because if you're an administrator for over a few years, you're going to see something like this occur. And just make sure you're ready for it. Thank you. I hope you